Here's something I want to ask you when someone finally listens to you. Truly listens. Do you feel relief or discomfort? Because for many people who grew up ignored, being seen doesn't feel safe. It feels unfamiliar. Children who grow up unnoticed often become adults who don't believe they deserve attention at all. They walk into rooms already shrinking themselves. They enter relationships wondering if they're too much. This isn't because they lack talent or worth. It's because their entire sense of self was built in silence. Psychologists call this an internalized neglect schema. Not because they don't need love, but because they've learnt it probably won't come. Have you ever noticed a child in a crowded room, quietly tugging at a parent's sleeve, just waiting for even a glance? Not crying, not demanding, just waiting. On the surface, it looks like nothing dramatic is happening. But inside that child, something profound and lasting is taking shape. Because for a child, being ignored isn't just disappointing, actually fractures their sense of identity. Childhood neglect doesn't always look like what we see in the movies. It doesn't always look like abuse or cruelty. Sometimes, it's just absence. It's missed eye contact. It's forgotten birthdays. And while children are incredibly resilient and they do adapt, adaptation is not the same as healing. When a child learns to live without acknowledgement, they adapt by shrinking, by hiding their needs, by convincing themselves they matter less. That strategy might help them survive childhood, but it often follows them, like a shadow, right into adulthood. From a psychological perspective, acknowledgement isn't just about feeling good, it's about survival. Developmental research shows that children need 3 core things to really thrive: safety, stimulation, and connection. And that connection being seen and valued is what shapes our identity most deeply. John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory, explained it this way: when caregivers consistently respond to a child's needs, the child develops trust. That trust becomes the blueprint for all their future relationships. They internalize a belief, a story they tell themselves. Maybe I don't deserve love. Maybe I'm just not that important. Neuroscience backs this up completely. When a child's attempts at connection are repeatedly ignored, their brain actually registers it as a threat. Stress hormones like cortisol flood their system. Over time, the nervous system wires itself to expect rejection. Anxiety becomes the new baseline. Emotional regulation becomes fragile and difficult. And from the outside, they just look like a quiet kid. Ignored children often stop asking questions. They stop showing excitement. They stop sharing their joy. Not because they don't feel it, but because they've learned no one will respond. And so, slowly, they disappear emotionally. And those invisible wounds, the ones no one can see, often don't surface until adulthood. Many adults who grew up feeling ignored struggle with low self-esteem. They hesitate to speak up in meetings, convinced that no one really cares what they have to say. Some might avoid relationships altogether, just to escape the possibility of rejection. Others chase approval endlessly, bending themselves into different shapes, hoping that one of them will finally earn them the acknowledgement they've always craved. Imagine an 8-year-old running home with a drawing they're incredibly proud of. They try to show it to a parent who's on the phone. They try again later, but the moment passes. Eventually, They put the drawing away and never mention it again. Now, imagine that small moment of disappointment repeating hundreds, maybe thousands of times. That child grows into an adult who instinctively minimizes their own achievements, an adult who struggles to celebrate themselves. The ignored child becomes the adult who ignores themselves. And research backs this up. A 2019 study in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry found that childhood emotional neglect strongly correlates with chronic loneliness in adulthood, when people have friends and partners. It's a loneliness that comes from feeling unseen, not from being alone. Now, it's so important to say that most parents who ignore their children aren't cruel. Ignored children often develop coping mechanisms that, on the surface, look like strengths. Fierce independence. Being the calm peacekeeper in every situation. But beneath those traits is often exhaustion. That independence can turn into an inability to trust others. That achievement can become crippling perfectionism. And that peacekeeping role can become chronic people-pleasing. Sometimes, the child just stops trying altogether. What makes this kind of pain so difficult to explain is that there's often no dramatic story. No single, terrible moment to point to. It's just silence. It's a collection of moments that should have mattered, but didn't. But healing is absolutely possible. It begins with recognition. With finally being able to say to yourself, what happened to me mattered. My needs were real, and they were valid. Healing doesn't start with faking confidence. It starts with simple acknowledgement. It looks like celebrating your own small wins. Naming your feelings out loud, even if it's just to yourself. Letting yourself believe that what you think and feel matters. Because the need to be seen doesn't just disappear when we get older. It just goes underground. Notice what others miss. Third, sensitivity is a real gift, but it often comes at the cost of neglecting themselves. They're so tuned in to everyone else that they forget to listen to their own needs. But here's the hopeful part. The brain is not fixed. It can and does rewire. Neuroplasticity is real. Every time you speak and are heard, your nervous system learns a little more about safety. Sometimes, it looks like saying, I need you to listen for a minute. They don't just heal their own wounds, they break a cycle for future generations. So, if you were that child, waiting quietly to be noticed, wondering if your presence mattered, Adele, please hear this. It did then, and it does now. You were just waiting to be seen. Thank you so much for watching. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more content like this.